Hi, Henry.
Hi, Mom.
I'm happy that you're here, and I can't wait to hear about all the books that have mattered to you.
Cannot wait to share them.
Henry, would you share a little bit about yourself? For example, how old you are, where you grew up, where you go to school?
I am Henry. Hello. I'm 6 foot, 17 years old. I go to Gar High School. I will be a senior. I'll be a senior. Wow. I live in Artesia. Lived here all my life. I enjoy it. And I love people.
Do you have any hobbies?
I enjoy playing volleyball. I wrestle. Mostly outdoor stuff. But I also like playing video games with my friends. My biggest thing is spending time with my family and friends. That's my biggest passion in life.
Can you recall your earliest memories of reading and of books?
I can. One of my first ones that I remember is Snuggle Puppy. That was one of my first childhood books. Another one that I'm more fond of is Detective Dinosaur that my grandpa would read to me, and I really enjoyed that one.
Do you remember how old you were when you could read for the first time?
I would say I was 3, maybe 2.5. I would read little like children's books, and my parents would help me or dad. And yeah,
Henry, when you could read independently, do you remember the very first book that you chose to read?
I do. It was a book called Darth Vader and Son. I picked it up myself because I love Star Wars. And I sat in the steps of the bookstore and read it to myself. And I was thinking, I'm such a grown up, look at me, I'm finally reading. And I think it's a very core memory I have. And it was very fun for the first time to read to myself.
Can you recall a favorite book from your adolescence?
I have a few. One of my favorites is The Outsiders, which I read in middle school. It really affected me because I was really like drawn to it kind of, and I was really invested in the story. So when some of the characters died, I was like one of the first books I actually cried in. And then it was kind of cool to see in a way where the two lifestyles clash and like the differences, and you could see a little bit of each part, which I enjoyed.
What do you think is the message of The Outsiders?
Finding who you are and your role in society. And then another book I enjoyed was Touching Spirit Bear. It's about like a delinquent who goes to an island in Canada, like has a spiritual encounter, and I really enjoyed that book. It's been a really long time since I read it, but a kid assaults another student, like gives him severe head trauma, brain damage, and so for punishment, they kind of isolate him alone in a Canadian island, and like his warden, kind of like watcher, is a Native American who's a sheriff, and he tells them that there's a silver bear, like white as snow in there, and it's spiritual. And the kid just starts like destroying and being like a jerk to like the landscape, and the bear comes, mauls him, attacks him, and so he's stranded there for like 3 days, and he just has like an experience, and I really enjoyed it.
Do you recall what was going on in your own life when you were reading that book?
I was in middle school. That's nothing big, but it was just hard. Middle school was not fun.
And what part of that story did you relate to?
I didn't really relate to it. I kind of felt for him. I felt bad because like of he had a bad childhood, bad past, and like how he was lost, and then in the end, he kind of reformed and turned better because of his eye awakening.
And then what was the awakening he had in the book?
Like the spiritual experience he had with the bear, and then like later he just learns lessons in the book.
Have you ever had a spiritual experience?
I have. The most recent one was about 2 months ago in May. It was my grandfather's birthday. He has passed. And I was in school and I asked permission to leave during lunch to visit him at the cemetery right across the street. And when I was there, I was just memorizing some of our just fun moments we've had, just reminiscing and mourning. And one of the thoughts that popped up into my head was he was really a cat person, and I think that's kind of like his little spirit animal. And when I was leaving, I was like, man, I wish I could see him. And I was just thinking about cats, I don't know why. And then out the corner of my eye while I'm leaving, I actually see one. And I didn't go near it because stray cats, they're scared, they're very skittish. But I looked at it and it looked at me. And it walked towards me and like rubbed up on my leg. And that tripped me out. Like I was having a moment. And I think that was very spiritual.
Henry, you mentioned how friendships and relationships are important to you and how you spend time and energy on those relationships.
Mhm.
Is there any connection between that aspect of your identity and a book or books that you might have read?
I wouldn't say books I have read, but people that were very close to me in my life in my youth would read to me. And I think that subconsciously, like they're close. I would like to get close to someone, and like that reading to me was comforting. So I use that to comfort others. Not read to them, but to be someone that's comforting to my friends and relationships.
So, Henry, we've talked about several different books that you've enjoyed. And because I am your mother, I am going to bring up a book because we laid a bet and I was wrong. You didn't bring this book up. I'm shocked because we've read this book
Okay,
about 7 times
okay.
together.
Another book
So I
I
just thought I should prompt you because of all the books you've read, I would think you might mention this one. And I haven't even said it yet, so we know you already know what it is. So let me just restate Henry, out of all the books that you've read, which one might be your favorite?
I'd say James and the Giant Peach or Charlotte's Web. Read that a bunch of times. Very fun books.
Let's talk about both of those.
Let's.
Okay, let's start with James and the Giant Peach. What do you think is the lesson of that book or the message of James and the Giant Peach?
Don't let other people hold back your dreams and aspirations. Because he wanted to go to New York and be successful, but his aunts would like bring him down like an anchor. And then when he finally broke off, like he got to meet many friends because he didn't have any. He got to be in New York and just like the possibilities were endless on what he could do.
And I can't remember, but at the end of the book, does he open a bookstore?
No, he lives in the pit of the peach, and what he does is kids go to Central Park and he tells the story of like the peach and how he got there, which is really sweet, I think. And that's also nice because he's telling stories, and I love that.
For you as a child reading Charlotte's Web,
Hmm.
was there anything about the character of Wilbur that you related to?
He was the runt. I was a very tiny boy. I was short, and I could relate. Like he was the runt, but he had a lot of oomph. Like he had a spark in him, and I was like, I have that.
And what do you think is the message of Charlotte's Web?
I think the message is to don't underestimate somebody because he was the runt.
And during your high school years, has there been a book that you've read that you've enjoyed?
I read The Catcher in the Rye, which was that was a good book. It was interesting
What did you like about that book?
how he sees the world and like how the world kind of shapes him and how he kind of has to grow. Like there's internal conflict within himself.
What did you take away from the reading of Catcher in the Rye?
He is in my age group, so I could relate to some of the problems he went through, some of the mental challenges it is to be a teenager. He's gone through loss, which I can relate to, which really I felt for and I could relate to a lot. And then sometimes he has internal conflict with himself. Like he's trying to improve, but his old habits are keeping him, which I've also related to.
So you've mentioned many different books throughout your life.
Hmm.
And if you had to choose only one that really matters to you, which book would you choose?
Probably a childhood book like Detective Dinosaur, because that has such a lot of history with me, and it's just very nostalgic. It may be a kid's book, but it just brings me back, and it's shaped who I am. The man who read it to me shaped who I was, and it's good that that book is still with me, so I could reminisce about that time.
Why do books matter?
They give us something that we can't give ourselves, which is a perception, like a canvas that we get to shape. Because if there's a book, we all are going to interpret it different than each other, which I think is awesome. Like, I'm going to give you an example with Spider Man. The reason he doesn't have any skin showing is so that anyone could picture themselves as Spider Man. So, in that sense, we picture that book, that storyline in any way we want, And that makes us unique because it's like we're putting ourselves and our imagination into that book.
What is your message about books and reading for parents of young children today?
Read with your children, no matter the time of day. Have that one-on-one experience and connection. Because when I was read to as a toddler or even a young kid, those memories are still with me today, and they've helped shape who I am. And reading with your kids is very important.
Okay, Henry, is there anything that you would like to share about books or reading that I haven't asked you?
I would one day like to read the Kama Sutra. Next question.
This will go in the outtakes
Yeah,
section.
I'll do it.
Is there anything about books or reading that I haven't yet asked you that you would want to share?
I would hate reading in school. When I would read in school, it's an assignment. We would rush it because we want to get the assignment done. And instead of experiencing the story, we are analyzing it, and so we could do it for a test or points. When I read outside of school, it's because I'm passionate about what I'm reading and I'm interested in the storyline and I want to connect with the characters and put myself into the story. You want to be able to choose where you're going to go for your next adventure. Because then it's just a chore to read a book you don't want to read. Like, ugh, now I gotta read this book. Rather than, let's go, I gotta put myself back in the story. Where am I going? That's the difference. It's more magical when you're not forced to.
As you look back on the time that we've spent today, what was this experience like for you?
I enjoyed it. It was fun to talk about books. It was fun to be here. It's just a fun experience. It's fun to be interviewed by my mom who has shared these memories with me, and I could kind of tell her how I processed them.
Thank you so much for being here, Henry.
Thank you for having me, Mom. I had a great time.